For the creative exploration assignment, I chose to present on Mexican Mennonites, as it's a culture found in my practicum school and one that's near and dear to my heart. I'll go through some geography, religion, history, educational systems, and language difficulties pertaining to this fascinating culture. So let's look at geography first. For this assignment, we'll be looking at Chihuahua State, where a lot of Mexican Mennonites come from. There's Cuauhtémoc, which apparently is hard to spell, and that's close to where my mom was born and my parents grew up. That's also where the information that I have on the educational system comes out of later on. Chihuahua is located in the west central part of Chihuahua State, and it's the largest state in the country. It is made up of 3 geological regions. A third of it is mountains, and it has more boreal forests than any other state in Mexico. A third of it is plains and valleys, which is an important agriculture zone in Mexico, and it's also the most populated region in this state. And a third of it is desert. And fun fact for you, Chihuahua State holds a canyon system that's larger and deeper than the Grand Canyon, and it's known as Copper Canyon, at least in English. I was there one summer with my family, and my younger brother decided to peer over the edge, and I very nearly had a heart attack. So that was exciting. On to religion. So very basically, Mexican Mennonites, as well as other Mennonites, are Christian, and they follow the Anabaptist faith, which is a result of Menno Simon's teachings of importance of Jesus' mission and ministry, which includes things like peace, love, and very importantly, adult baptism, or believer's baptism, as it's sometimes known as. So basically, adult baptism is kind of a thing because Menno Simons argue that adults should be making a conscious and deliberate choice to be baptized rather than receiving infant baptism when they don't actually know what's going on. On to history. Okay, so it all starts in Russia back in the 1870s. Mennonites were having kids, they were farming, and they were going to church up until Russia began conscripting boys and men into the army. As you may or may not know, Mennonites are pacifists, so this was kind of a big deal, and they freaked out and wondered where the heck they would go. After a lot of deliberations and going overseas to check out other countries, Canada and the US were chosen as destinations. So specifically in Manitoba, as it's important to the Mexican migration, up until the 1920s, Mennonites in Manitoba were free to do their own thing, living on their colony, so they continued teaching in their own language. But in the 1920s, Manitoba decided that English would now be a mandatory subject to be taught in all schools, and instruction, I think, would have to be in English as well. So a bunch of the super conservative Mennonites pieced out and headed down south to where they would be able to live and teach how they wanted to. The Mexican president offered the Mennonites large plots of land on which to build new colonies and practice their way of life. And the best part of it, no conscription. So now that we're in Mexico, the Mexican Mennonites are in Mexico, obviously. Let's move on to the educational system. So just like a preamble first, I think a lot of people think that Mexican Mennonites are kind of backwards, and they kind of are uneducated or, stuff like that. But that's actually really not the case. It's just not the case. Maybe in some conservative areas, it still is kind of, I guess, quote, backwards. But like I said, that's just not the case. Anyway, for this portion of the project, I turned to 2 of my cousins who went through the school system on a Mexican Mennonite colony. And they're 1 or 2 years younger than me, so this is still relevant information. So this is what they had to say. First of all, school runs from 9 to 4 p.m. It's like a regular school day. The school day starts off with a devotional every morning. Mandatory courses that are taught are math, language arts, science, social studies, and Bible. In high school, students have to take computer basics and typing. In grade 1, students receive instruction in High German and are expected to speak it, which is, I guess, it's pretty hard for them as they don't really speak High German on the colony. It's all, everyone speaks in Low German, but that's just how they do it. They speak in High German in school. So yeah, like I said, this is usually a new language for them, But they do this because the older generations on the colony, they also went through the school system where it was more strict, and they had to speak and read and write in High German. So it's kind of like a tradition thing. That's why they still learn High German in school. But by grade 3 and 4, students begin learning English, and by grade 5, instruction is in English, and students are generally speaking English. And you think that living in Mexico, students would have to learn Spanish, but that isn't necessarily the case. Sometimes it's taught in school, or you can take one Spanish class after graduation. But that's if you decide to go through the high school education system, because it's not actually mandatory to finish high school in Mexico. I mean, you mostly farm anyway after school. On to language difficulties. So, like I said before, there are some schools or colonies that are still more conservative than others, so they might not even offer English or instruct in English, which can be hard then if you're immigrating from those countries, like from those areas, to places like my practicum school area and not having really any previous knowledge in English. Also, although students in other schools might start learning English in grade 5, they might not get intentional instruction in academic English, which is kind of what we've been talking about in ESL. So they might have like conversational English, they might be writing in conversational English, but like they just might not have that background in academic English, which I've actually noticed with some of the students in my practicum school, and in particular, there's one Mexican Mennonite in one of my classes, and you can tell that while his spoken English is good, his written English isn't necessarily the greatest. And another difficulty that might present itself is the whole accent thing.